Hi, this is a video about Queen Elizabeth II. By the way, this is my first video, so will be probably pretty awkward. If you'd like to stay around, hopefully it'll get a little bit better. If not, then still stay and watch because it is kind of enjoyable to watch people very uncomfortable on camera. This video is actually about Queen Elizabeth's childhood, so in reality when she was Princess Elizabeth, and it starts April 21st, 1926. It's very close to my birth date. By the way, by day, not by year. The gray's not that bad, I don't think. She was born at 17 Bruton Street, Mayfair, London. This was the home of her grandparents, the Earl and Countess of Strathmore and Kinghorn. This was just one of many homes that they owned. There was their main residence, Glamis Castle. There was their other home, St. Paul's Waldenbury. Gibbside Hall, Strathlam Castle, and Wolmer's Park. Sorry, I had to read those people. There's a lot, and they're kind of odd names. This family, if you could tell, was very, very wealthy.
And make it rain, make it rain, make it...
In reality, the Duke and Duchess of York, Princess Elizabeth's parents, were actually the poor relations in this, which kind of seems funny. They are the royals. But in reality, he was only the second son of King George V. Fun fact about the Duke and Duchess of York, in reality, when he was the Duke of York and she was Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, he actually proposed 3 times. Twice she turned him down. The third time was actually when she finally said yes. He had an older brother who was Prince of Wales. He would go on to become Edward VII before abdicating to marry an American divorcee. So in reality, their income was not amazingly large. After she was born, they were given a home at 145 Piccadilly. And as country residents, Windsor Lodge at Windsor Castle's Great Park. Right. She lived at 145 Piccadilly until about the age of 10, when her grandfather died in 1936. Her uncle became King Edward VII and then abdicated before his coronation, like I said, to marry an American divorcee, which was absolutely taboo at the time. So her father became King George VI, and by this point, that family now had quite a few homes. I'll put a list up here: Windsor Castle, Buckingham Palace, Sandringham House, Balmoral, and pretty much every other royal residence that you can think of. When she was born, her family's nickname for her was Lilibet. It was said it's because she could not say her name, so this is the name she used, and it just kind of stuck. She also called her grandfather, George V, Grandpa England. Her sister Margaret was born in 1930. When her father became king,
lowers it on the royal brow. The king is crowned. The peers acclaim their sovereign.
she became the heiress presumptive. The normal term would be heir apparent, like Charles was the minute she became queen. Unfortunately for women, that wasn't how that worked at the time. It was heiress presumptive. If her parents had had a son, even in their 50s, that son would have actually been king over either of his 2 older sisters. It was kind of weird at the time because in reality they were not having children. Her uncle was not having children. It was very apparent that she was going to be queen. The family was very close. They called themselves We Four. And in reality, that's kind of partially because they lived in a gilded cage. Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, you do have friends, but in reality, you're royal. You're different than them. They treat you differently. So the only people that you can kind of feel close to are your immediate family. The Queen, up until her death, was very similar to this. The family all vacationed together. They went to their homes together because in reality, that's who you can be close to. After her father became king, her life for a period was very similar to what her life would be pretty much for the rest of it. They traveled between Buckingham Palace, which was the working palace, the offices were there, everything like that. Windsor Castle was the weekend home. Then there was Sandringham for Christmas and Balmoral for the summer because, you got to hunt on those like 40,000 acres. They set up at Buckingham Palace a Girl Guides troupe. The funniest part is she wasn't the leader of this. Her cousin Patricia Mountbatten was. The Mountbattens come back a little bit later, like Philip. But again, it even just points out, though, it's not like she could go to like a normal Girl Guide troupe or anything like that. They kind of had to bring it in-house. And it was basically surrounding her with aristocrats and family members, so European royals. Her normal was never going to be everybody else's normal, but I do give her parents props. They really did try. This was interrupted, obviously, by World War II. At this point, the idea was to send the princesses to Canada, which, you should have come here. But in reality, the Queen did say, "The children won't go without me, I won't leave without the King, and the King will never leave." So they were moved first to Balmoral, then at Christmas 39, they were moved to Sandringham, then to the Royal Lodge, and then Windsor Castle. So in reality, they probably should have just moved directly to Windsor Castle. It is an actual fortress. So from this point on, they pretty much stayed at Windsor Castle for the next 5 years of the war. Life wasn't the best for them. Like, they still followed rations, like their bathtubs couldn't be filled past a certain mark. Their food was rationed. They were also 2 small princesses. I don't really think that was the worst for them. They also did have to do air raids. In reality, though, their bunker was the dungeons and cellars of a 1,000-year-old castle. Like, I'd probably still be cool with having to use those. They also did pantomimes. Like, her parents would still come on weekends. They're royal. They still had to appoint house parties, right? The aristocrats were coming, relatives who were either taking shelter in England because, their country had been overrun, something like that. So they're all still coming. So they would do pantomimes. She had already met her future husband at like a royal engagement at his school. But in reality, like, he had come to one of these two and seen her again. Also, remember, she was a young teenager at this time, though, so, like, not sexy. She also gave her first radio broadcast in 1940.
Thousands of you in this country have had to leave your homes and be separated from your fathers and mothers. My sister, Margaret Rose, and I feel so much for you, as we know from experience what it means to be away from those we love most of all. We send a message of true sympathy, and at the same time we would like to thank the kind people who have welcomed you to their homes in the country. All of us children who are still at home think continually of our friends and relations who have gone overseas, who have traveled thousands of miles to find a wartime home and a kindly welcome in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and the United States of America. And when peace comes, remember, it will be for us, the children of today, to make the world of tomorrow a better and happier place.
Basically, like, it was to speak to the children of England who were going through the same thing as her. But it was to keep a morals up sort of thing. It was like, look, our princess is here. We can all make it through this. I am living in a castle. You're not. But at the same time, though, we're all getting through this. At some point during the war, she did start to work with the Auxiliary Territorial Service, which in reality was like the women's version of the Army Corps. They drove ambulances, fixed trucks, were basically like mechanics and stuff like that. She still learned all the normal things that everybody did. She learned how to fix the ambulances. She learned how to drive the ambulances. After the war, on Victory Day in Europe, she went on the balcony with both her parents and Winston Churchill, which, like, that's got to be a moment, right? Millions and millions of people streaming through London just to see them as they celebrated a king and queen who had actually done an amazing job. They represented what England was about. The resilience, they went and saw the worst hit places. Buckingham Palace had been bombed during the war, and they stayed, sort of thing. This family at the end of the war absolutely represented everything that England stood for. And to stand beside Winston Churchill, probably the last great statesman of the world, probably felt absolutely amazing. They also wanted to join the crowd, though. They wanted to actually be involved in like everybody's celebration. So her parents actually did let her and Margaret go down. They had a security officer, they had caps on their head and stuff like that, but they were actually able to celebrate in the streets with everybody else. Probably the last time that Elizabeth really spontaneously was one with her subjects, like enjoyed the day just like anybody else would. She was not seen, I guess, supposedly. It also just points out like how dangerous our world has become since she was young. They just had less security back then. Today it's definitely a lot more dangerous, I guess. I'm thinking for my next video, I'm gonna do her late teen years into like, you know, her first part of her marriage and stuff like that, to film Mountbatten, how they met, what ended up happening there, their children. I hope you enjoyed this one though. Thanks, bye.